I've skipped Jason's question for now. And tutorials are not compulsory. Okay, so you can choose to go to the on-campus tutorial. You can choose to go to the online Zoom tutorial, or you can choose to watch the recording when it becomes available. Okay, we're giving you ultimate flexibility with this, given the scenario that we're living in. And you don't need to inform your tutor if you cannot attend the on-campus class. Okay, any other questions, guys, before we move on? Okay, I'm just going to take a sip of water. And what we're going to do next is do a quick summary of lecture 1, the introduction, and relate the things we've learnt to some real world things to give you a better sense as to what's going on. Okay, so let me just get this up. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at lecture 1, the introduction. We're going to look at some of the key concepts, not all of them. We're going to look at relating those things to the real world, and then we'll wrap this up. So let's begin. So these are the same goals that we have on the pre-recordings. We're not going to go through all of them. So if you want to learn more about the different types of business organizations, such as sole traders, partnerships, and companies, make sure you watch the recordings. And the recordings also have more information about principal and agent law. Okay, so just because it's the intro class, I just want to break finance up one more time, just in case none of you guys are too familiar with it. Then we'll proceed to doing some more relevant things. So if I had to break finance up into 4 things, these would be the 4 things. The first is corporate finance, aka also known as business finance. This is what we are focusing on in this subject. Okay, so corporate finance is very broad. It covers basic theories. So earlier I talked about the time value of money, diversification, and arbitrage. Corporate finance covers those things. It also covers things like capital budgeting, cost of capital, and capital structure, which I'm going to talk about on the next slide. Does anyone know what CFO stands for in the finance world? Just pop that into the chat if you do. Very good. Samira, Darcy, Stephanie, everyone's on the right track. So the CFO is the Chief Financial Officer. They are ultimately in charge of all the finance decisions in a company. So there's 3 main finance decisions. One is the investment decision. These are the assets that a company buys to generate its cash flows. So for example, Qantas invests or buys planes to make its money. The financing decision is the second one. This is how a company funds its operations. So it can do this by borrowing money from someone else or getting other people to inject money into the company. And the third is the working capital decision, the day-to-day things that need to be done to keep things ticking along. Okay, so the other areas of finance, you will definitely have heard of them because you already invest money in your savings account. So you already know about investments. Because you have a savings account, you already deal with financial institutions like the banks. And I'm sure you're all aware of the large companies that operate on a global scale. Your McDonald's, Ferraris, Louis Vuittons, all of those things, they are your international companies. All right, so let's start doing something a little bit more interesting. So we're going to talk more about Qantas now. Okay, so earlier we established that Qantas had the trading symbol QAN. Okay, it operates in the airlines industry. If you wanted to buy Qantas today, its price is about $3.52. Does anybody know what ASX stands for? Okay, very good, Stephanie. Lessa, sorry if I'm pronouncing your names incorrectly. Georgia, you're all on the right track. So the ASX is the Australian Stock Exchange. So if you want to buy shares on the Australian market, that's where you go. Okay. So Qantas has a market capitalization or firm value of 6.69 billion. So B means $1 billion. So it's large, but it's not Apple large. Okay, so it's still a large company. It pays about 25 cents per share in dividends or in cash to its owners per share, and it has a beta of about 1.02. So here at the bottom here, we have the stock price graph for Qantas. If you bought Qantas here in about the late 90s for about $4, and you still held Qantas till today, do you think that would have been a good investment? If you have a view on this, pop it into the chat. Okay, so I'll give you a few moments to put it into the chat if you want to. Okay. So a few of you are saying yes, a lot of you are saying no. So from a finance point of view, if you bought it for $4 or less than $4 and it's still less than $4 at $3.50 now, you haven't made any money. Okay, so you could consider that as being not a great investment. Okay. It's a little bit more complicated than the question I asked because dividends are another form of return that you can get. So you need to factor that into account. And if I put it differently, if you bought Qantas in 2014 at its low of about $1.50 and you sold it at its high of about almost $8, you know, maybe that could be, if from a purely basic finance point of view, you might consider that to have been a good investment. Okay, you've almost tripled or quadrupled your money in a sense. Aidan, we'll talk more about beta in subsequent lectures, but more risk, or in fact, we'll talk about risk in a few slides' time as well. And Melissa, these slides that I'm putting up aren't available online. I'll decide what I'm going to do with uploading them or not, so I'll get back to you shortly. Okay, so the reason I'm introducing you to Qantas is because I want to talk about Qantas's leadership team. Okay, so if you're a company, you will have what's known as a board of directors. Okay, so you might have not heard of this before, but a board of directors is essentially a group of people who represent the shareholders or owners of Qantas. Okay, so they can be anyone inside or outside the firm. And typically they are there to oversee managers. They're there to hire and fire managers. They're there to set dividend policies. They're there to set company strategy. They're there to decide on how much the leaders get paid. Okay, so on this page here, I've got 4 people from Qantas's leadership team here. Okay, I've got Alan Joyce, the Chief Executive Officer, Vanessa Hudson, Andrew Finch, and Stephanie Tully. Of these 4 people, which one of these guys is the financial manager? If you've got a view on this, pop this into the chat. Okay, so a lot of you are putting Vanessa, very good. Okay, so Vanessa is the CFO or the Chief Financial Officer